The National Football League announces they will perform 2 national anthems before every game, a black national anthem and a white national anthem. The president signed into law a new National Independence Day for black people. And celebrities call for a melanated version of the American flag to represent colored people. No, this isn't Jim Crow America. This is woke America. I'm HanaLyn COLVIN, and I'm very proud to welcome you to the first episode of HanaLyn. So I want to talk to you guys about segregation. There is this idea that has been germinating along the woke fringes that is beginning to take root in the mainstream discourse about our shared national holidays and symbols. And it's this idea that the 4th of July only celebrates the freedom of white people and that black people are not and should not be included. And the idea that all of our national symbols, from our anthem to our flag, are rooted in white supremacy. This is a deliberate effort to reframe our history through a solely racial lens and to reinstantiate segregation under the guise of social justice. In this case, progressive is regressive. So you've got the NFL announcing that they are going to begin every game this season with 2 national anthems. You have the standard American national anthem and the colloquial black national anthem. But when you juxtapose these things, you're saying there is one anthem that is for black people and then another anthem that represents what? Americans? White people? It's segregation. You are segregating Americans along the lines of our shared national anthem. You are saying that these 2 groups are not one people, that they are not included. So this is a terribly dangerous idea because it is regressing us right back into Jim Crow era segregationist thinking. MACY, the singer, recently came out with an op-ed in MarketWatch claiming that the American flag itself needs to be redesigned because there needs to be a melanated version that represents people of color, as if the American flag is somehow representative of skin color and only applies to one race of people and not to all Americans. I mean, what would MACY say to someone like Tamara Mensah-Stock, the young black woman who just won gold in wrestling in the Olympics and who wrapped herself in the American flag afterwards with so much pride in her country as an American, as a first-generation American? Her father is from Ghana. To say that the American flag doesn't represent her because of her skin color is offensive. It's offensive to me as an American. The idea that someone like that someone that we all should be looking up to and taking pride in as a representative of this country, that we're supposed to look at her as something other, as not belonging, is offensive. President Biden signed into law the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act. Now, this act establishes Juneteenth as a national holiday that commemorates the emancipation of black slaves and the abolition of slavery in America. This is an important date, and it's a significant holiday that all Americans of all backgrounds and all races should be celebrating. The problem is that the act calls it a National Independence Day. And what they're trying to do with this language is to elevate Juneteenth as a competitor to the 4th of July and the founding of this country. And you see this line of thinking represented by people like the political commentator Torre, who wrote an article in the Griot entitled "F the 4th of July, the only Independence Day I recognize is Juneteenth." The problem is Juneteenth is not the founding of this country. So Touré, he draws very heavily on the 1619 Project, which was the project in the New York Times Magazine spearheaded by Nikole Hannah-Jones, which is a deliberate effort to reframe American history and, as they say, to create a new origin story for the founding of the country. And they base the founding of the country not in the date of the signing of the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, but in 1619 and the arrival of the first African slaves to America. So they are deliberately connecting the founding of the country to the institution of slavery in order to claim that the country is inherently, irredeemably, and systemically racist. In her essay for the project, Nikole Hannah-Jones makes the erroneous claim that the real reason that the colonies revolted from Britain was because they were afraid that Britain was about to abolish slavery, and therefore the entire American Revolution, the entire American experiment of freedom, was undertaken solely for the purpose of preserving the institution of slavery. Now, this claim has been debunked by a number of academics and historians, including Gordon Wood and William Allen, Philip Magnus, but this myth that the 1619 Project promotes still persists. So the idea is completely ridiculous historically. England didn't abolish slavery in the colonies until 1833. They didn't abolish the slave trade until 1807, which was only 1 year before the United States did. Furthermore, the birth of America gave rise to a surge in abolition movements throughout the Western world. Black slaves themselves were able to petition state legislatures in the North for their freedom on the basis of the Declaration of Independence. Vermont abolished slavery a year after the Declaration was signed, and in fact, at the time that the Constitution was ratified, 5 of the 13 states that joined the Union had already abolished slavery. So far from being wrapped up in the founding of the country, slavery was given a death sentence by the very Declaration of Independence that established our nation. It didn't happen all at once, but it was inevitable. Because once those truths, that man was created equal and endowed with the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, once those truths had been articulated, they could not long be denied. And that is what every great civil rights leader of our country has known, that the Declaration of Independence was the cornerstone of every major civil rights movement. Frederick Douglass seized on these eternal principles of the Declaration in order to stake his claim that he was entitled as a man to the same freedoms and rights that were guaranteed in the founding documents. He said, "I don't even have to argue it. You yourselves have declared it to be so. You have declared that all men are created equal, and I am a man, and I am staking my claim to those rights on your very assertion." Martin Luther King Jr. marveled at the universalism of those principles. They didn't say some men are created equal, as they very well could have. They did not say all white men are created equal, as they very well could have. They said all men are created equal. And to claim now that those statements of eternal principles are denied to one segment of our population based on the color of their skin is merely to argue the same segregationist and racist rhetoric that was used by slaveholders like John C. Calhoun and other proponents of slavery at the time before the Civil War, where they argued that those principles should not have even been included in the Declaration, that the statement that all men are created equal was unnecessary to the founding of our country, and yet it was included because it was fundamental, because the founders knew that on the basis of those eternal principles, every subsequent generation would be able to stake their claim as an heir to the legacy of liberty that they had set into place. To say now that Black people are not included in these promises, in these rights, is an insult to the sacrifices of every man and woman, black and white, who fought to make those principles a reality. It really is a whitewashing of America. It is a white-centric, segregationist view that claims that this nation is and always will be a white supremacist nation. If I were to say that the national anthem is only an anthem for white people, what would you think of me? And if I were to say that the 4th of July only celebrates the freedom of white people because this is a white nation and black people are not included, what would you think of me? You'd probably think that I was a racist. And you know what? You would be right, because that sounds pretty damn racist to me. And yet that is exactly what these segregationist progressives want us to believe. They want us to adopt the creed and the mantras and the values of the segregationist Jim Crow era. In his article, Teray says that America has never been the land of liberty and justice for all. Those words have never meant anything to black people. Well, they meant something to Tamara Mensah-Stock. They meant something to a great American patriot, James Armistead Lafayette. He fought and served in the American Revolution as a double agent. And the information that he provided from the British to the American Army was crucial in our success at the Battle of Yorktown, which led to the British surrender. We would not be here as a country if it were not for that American patriot, James Armistead Lafayette, a black American, someone who deserves to be celebrated when we talk about the 4th of July and our national Independence Day. Those words mean something to someone like my boyfriend, who came here as a young child from Liberia, as an immigrant to these shores, the same way that my great-grandmother was an immigrant from Norway as a young woman, and the same way that she could claim for herself and for her descendants, for myself, for my sister, that we can say that we are inheritors of the American dream. My boyfriend, who is a different skin color than I do, can stand on the same principles and claim the same inheritance because we are one as Americans. When we have children, those children will be mixed race. What am I supposed to tell our children? That they have separate histories? That they have separate bifurcated schizophrenic identities? That one part of them is oppressed and one part of them is oppressor, that one part of them is American and one part of them is not free? Because I won't do that. I won't bring children into this world in order to segregate them. I won't bring children into a society that tells them that on the basis of the color of their skin they are not entitled to the same rights and privileges as any other American. I won't be an ally to bigotry. I won't be an ally to segregation. I won't be an ally to racism, because that's exactly what this is. It is racism. It doesn't matter how you dress it up. It doesn't matter what you call it. It doesn't matter what perfume of social justice you try to spray on it to cover the stench. It stinks of racism. And we need more people of courage to call it out. There are too many cowardly white allies who are more concerned with their social media credibility and their woke accolades than they are about actually standing up for what is right and what is just. And in the name of social justice, they will sell their soul to this segregationist ideology. And it needs to stop. People need to call it out for what it is. It is racism. It was segregation under Jim Crow, and it is segregation under social justice. We cannot survive in this country if we continue to think of ourselves as separate people under separate flags with separate national anthems and separate national holidays. And I won't participate in it. The country is revolutionary precisely because of the principles that we articulated at the founding, that all of us are included in the promise and the rights that are guaranteed in the Declaration. And that's been some uncensored truth. I'm HanaLyn Colvin, and this has been the very first episode of HanaLyn, a Blind Money Underdawgz production. Thank you guys for joining us, and I can't wait to welcome you back to future episodes. Take care.